Well, most workers across the country are battling with the high cost of living, and that's now been made worse by years of sluggish economic growth in the country. Statistics South Africa recently pointed out that power cuts and the effects of the COVID-19 lockdowns have also made the situation worse for many. Today, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Cosatu, is convening its 14th National Congress, where it is hoping to address many of those issues. Let's bring in our guest this afternoon who can talk further about where we are in terms of the strength of labour. Puke, Maserumule, a labour analyst. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Grateful for your time. Is this a moment of reckoning, do you think, for Cosatu, when you consider the multiple factors that are stacked against it, and more importantly, the working class in South Africa?
Afternoon. It's a moment of reckoning for Cosatu, but I guess it's a moment of reckoning for almost everybody else who has an interest in what's going on in this country. Cosatu's problem, obviously, is that on the one hand, it's a federation that represents the interests of workers, and therefore it's meant to engage both business and government in relation to those kind of matters relating to policies that affect the livelihoods of workers. At the same time, it's a federation that is also in an alliance with the ruling party, and which makes it probably privy to information and decisions which other federations may not necessarily be privy to. So, in a sense, it's caught between, the two, between the loyalty to its members on the one hand, and the fact that it has an alliance with the government on the other. But its members certainly would expect that Cosatu will take on government in relation to policy matters which are, negatively perhaps impacting on workers.
Right. But Cosatu, in the speech by Zingiswalosi this morning, conceded that the ANC is not perfect, but then rounded that off by saying that the African National Congress has stood with workers in South Africa, and I wonder to what extent workers in present-day South African working environments feel that is true when you consider just how hard many of them have it.
Yeah, that's an issue that is obviously open for debate, but I guess you've got to look at it from this point of view. From government's point of view, it will say, if you look at what we've done with legislation, for example, we've put in place legislative measures which are in favor of workers, which protect the interests of workers, and we have promoted, engagement between labor and businesses. So that has been indicative of government support for the rights of workers. On the other hand, an argument could be made that when you look at other decision-making processes relating to monetary policy, fiscal policy, decisions which government has made may not always be seen to be supportive of workers. I only have to refer you to the recent interest rate hikes, which will obviously negatively impact on workers, but at the same time, government has to say we must, the MPC needs to, the Reserve Bank needs to protect the value of the rand and keep inflation down. So you're always going to have, that tension between decisions that government makes, which on the one hand, Cosatu may justifiably say are in favor of workers, and those which are not always seem to be in favor of workers. Right. But certainly, there's the room for debate in relation to whether it's been good or bad.
One of the other things that the delegates of this Congress will have to chew on is why it is that only 27% of people of working age or people who work in South Africa are actually unionized. And Zingiswalosi said they need to figure out why that is, but also appeal or find a way to appeal to the younger segment of the working population in this country. How would you answer those two questions? A, why it is that less than 30% of workers in this country are unionized, and B, why it appears that younger workers in this country are even more reluctant or disinterested in joining a union?
It's a very interesting phenomenon. I'm not entirely sure whether there's a simple answer to it. But if you look at a federation like Cosatu and therefore its constituent members, they're obviously, openly politically aligned with the ruling party. And if you look at young working people, those may not necessarily be young people who are supportive of the ruling party, who know the history of of the ruling party where it comes from. So you're going to probably have this tension where the younger people may not necessarily be willing to join unions, or at least be willing to join unions which are affiliated with Cosatu, which is seen to be too closely linked with a government to which they may not necessarily feel great sympathy towards. So that is a possible explanation why particularly younger people are not joining unions. As for the older generation, it's a little bit tricky because the older generation would have grown up from when they started work being members of unions and would have seen the benefits to be gained from union membership. Why they have chosen at this point not to continue their membership, it's open to debate. Part of it could be that, I don't know, maybe the older people have fallen off the marketplace and they've retired, they've been retrenched due to the economic downturn before COVID. Then came COVID and a lot of them also lost their jobs. And therefore that if like that group of that generation of workers who were part of the labor movement may no longer be in employment, and the majority will be the younger people who, as I've said, may feel less inclined to join unions because they may feel that the unions are too politicized.
And I wonder if the work environment in South Africa today has perhaps evolved from what it was in the late 80s at the formation of some of these unions and 90s, and now you're looking at 2022 where perhaps the needs, if this is true, of workers have gone beyond negotiating around a fair salary and increases there, issues around maternity leave. I know Cosatu today was very proud of the fact that it's been able to negotiate for maternity leave for people who sadly have stillbirths or third trimester miscarriages. But have the needs of the workers become perhaps slightly more complex than what unions envisaged 30, 35 years ago?
Well, the world of work has certainly changed. So, for that reason, the interest of working people would also have changed. The issues that are of great concern to them would have changed. So if you go back 10, 15, 20 years ago, when you had, the mining industry being one of the biggest, private sector employers, today that's no longer the position. So you look at where issues are arising and what kind of issues. Probably people are looking more for flexible working arrangements. COVID has also introduced that, against perhaps our will, but we now live in this world where I can sit in my office and do most of my work from there. My needs or the needs of my employees may be different. What they are looking for may be different. And if they have better skills, it may well be that they are better to negotiate even their entry-level salaries.
Right.
And what they are looking for is something else, which unions traditionally may not yet have been able to look at and catch up with, to be able to address those needs of those younger, more skilled, more professional working people.
Just finally, Mr. Maserumule, you talk about the change in the work environment, and Zingi Salosi said they would like to see, as Cosatu, a membership increase to around 2 million by the time of the next Congress. They want to go around or go for people who work in the e-services sector, the likes of Uber drivers, for instance. But when you look at Uber and the problems there, for instance, those drivers aren't necessarily employees of the platform. So I wonder how much opportunity for growth would lie in such a sector.
Yeah, look, there's obviously a challenge. I guess you've got to look at where are jobs being created, if any jobs are being created, at least in numbers such that unions can look to those sectors and be able to
I think we've lost
more momentum. If you look at it, like you say, it's e-commerce. So those are going to be younger people who have to be accessed differently because they may be working from home. They may not necessarily be out there to be easily organized. So I don't think that your kind of Uber industry, transport industry is going to represent the source for the growth of the union movement. No, I don't think so.
Mr. Puke, Maserumule, good to have your time today. Thank you.